Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is our Buc'In the News show for September 22nd as we head into our as we head into our Pittsburg Steelers game, Monday Night Football. We are coming to you a day late because the entire week has been thrown off. Joining me, as always, a man who is playing some form of charades right now, or possibly really bad sign language.
Bad sign language.
Rendaxed.
We're on Google Hangouts. My picture's down in the corner, so I'm like during the national anthem. I'm the signer person. I was signing what you were saying for our listening impaired.
You're signing for our listening impaired audience on an audio only podcast.
Well, I'm practicing. Like you said, it's not very good.
Did you know that I know sign language? I'm very fluent in sign language.
Did you know that I don't care?
Yes, I did, actually. 100%.
How did that come about? Why?
My grandparents are deaf, and I grew up living with them. It was my grandparents, my mom, and my dad all in the same house, and then me. So it just grew up doing sign language just like I do English. So unfortunately, not Spanish. Would have served me better. Anyway.
You got to find your crowd, man. You just got to find your crowd.
But the people are here not to learn about my family history. They're here to hear about the Buccaneers. This is our Buc'In the News show. If you're not familiar with how this show works, this is the show where we get to the end of the week. All of the practices have happened. All of the injury reports are out. All of the headlines have happened. There's nothing left to do except for play the game. And this is where we get to talk about everything that has really happened over the course of the week, since we've spent the rest of our shows talking about the previous game and reviewing game films. So with that, we usually hit three major areas. We look at the transactions that the team has made when we talk about the headlines, and then we talk about the injury reports. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Ren, we've got a really big transaction report for this week.
I know. This one's going to be a while.
Yes. So to run down the number of transactions that the Buccaneers have had, let me take a breath. And here we go.
Start from the bottom.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
The Buccaneers had no transactions this week, Ren.
Okay, good. I thought my headphones went out for a second.
No transactions. This is exactly the same team this week as it was last week.
We almost had a transaction.
Almost.
I almost had a transaction. It was reported by Rick Stroud that the Buccaneers were pulling up their practice squad defensive tackle, and then about 10, 20 minutes later, he said, "Nope, I'm a liar. My mistake," and that did not happen. So, but it was I guess it wasn't it was a move you could see happening, but
it was an anticipated move. We kind of heard about it a little bit throughout the day of the anticipation of it, But
then you would have to cut somebody when they brought him up. And then I think that was sort of the stopper, like why you wouldn't go through it. Like, oh, we're going to bring this guy up. Who are we going to drop? And it's like, we don't want to drop anyone from this game for this guy. Like, we'll just have to,
right.
Curry and N's going to have to play some tackle, and Golston, of course, is going to have to play some tackle, and maybe even JPP is going to have to play some defensive tackle. And we still got Worthy. So, we have to make do. They
can bring in some of those linebackers on the edge to help out if they need to. So they'll be fine, and let's not cut anybody. That actually makes a whole lot of sense, because I have seen out there on social media a lot of people saying, why didn't they bring somebody in to replace? And we'll get to this a little bit later, but Bo Allen is out for this game with an injury. A couple people saying, why didn't we bring him up? Vita Vea is still out. So you got Vita Vea, Bo Allen, and Mitch Unrein, who is still on injured reserve with a concussion. That's a significant part of the interior of our line. So the idea that they could use some additional help certainly is merited, and I understand why people would be thinking that. But that's a good point, Ren. I think that, there was nobody that they wanted to cut
for this game.
In exchange for having this guy from the practice squad come up. So.
Yeah.
All right. So that is really our injury report. So Ren, we'll kind of get to the big headlines, and they're really for an extra day for a week where we had some additional time. There wasn't a ton of headlines that came out. I feel like so far this year, the headlines, there's not been as much drama this year as there was last year. If I seem to remember last year, there was a lot more headlines, it felt like, to talk about week to week, but there are a few. I think I don't want to say it's the big one, but I think it's one of the big ones, is Vita Vea was finally back at practice in pads this week, and he was listed as limited participation on all 3 days. So Vita is back.
Yeah, finally, right?
Mm-hmm.
The big Polynesian is in pads and practicing. So that was good to see. Even though I know we're going to get to it later, but spoiler alert for everybody who doesn't know, and everybody does know, he's not going to be active for the Steelers game. Probably, it's just he's just not caught up to speed yet. He hasn't practiced in 7 weeks, and I'm sure he'll be ready for the Chicago game, though. And that goes into the reason why the Bucs, why aren't they pulling up a defensive tackle from the practice squad? And I guess you could look at it as well, too, that they don't think the Bo Allen injury is serious enough to bring somebody up. It's like, okay, we only got to make this work for one game, because next week's in Chicago. If no one new gets injured, we'll have Vea, Allen, and McCoy and Worthy all ready to go against Chicago. And
honestly, even if they don't, even if these guys are out for one more game, we then roll into the bye week right after that. So, it's if we can just tough it out for these 2 games, then we have the bye week, so we can get, these guys will miss 2 games, but they get 3 off, ostensibly 4 if we really need to, because you have a week on each side of the game. So, I certainly see it. I did like Coach Cutter. He'd said in one of his press conferences about Vita Vea, he said sometimes the bigger bodies just need more time depending on the condition that they come in. And we've all heard that the last 7 weeks, Vita Vea has been doing nothing but conditioning. He's dropped something like 15 pounds, I think is the report, which is good. I remember way back when we first drafted him, Ian Beckles had talked about a conversation he had with Warren Sapp, and this kind of made the rounds of how Warren Sapp said, big guys can't play in Tampa. Big guys can't play in Tampa. And as much as I didn't want him to be right, and I'm not saying that he was right, still, he's a big guy. Injury happened, and part of the solution has been to get him in a much better condition and have him drop about 15 pounds. I don't know if they're still aiming, if that's where they want him, or if they still want him to come down a little bit more. But, it can only help him, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess make him a little faster. Apparently he's a really strong guy. I reported, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 pods ago about how he's one of the only of 8 people at the combine to push 225 up over 40 times. So obviously the strength is there. And even if he drops 15 pounds, it still makes him around 335. It's not like,
right.
It's not Noah Spence where it's like, oh, now you're too light, or, where it worries you. And the way the Bucs talked about it in Dirk Cutter, it just seemed like this was the plan the whole entire time. Was when he got here, we want him to play. They had a specific weight they wanted him to play at, and it feels like that he's there now. Yeah,
and I don't want to say, because you're 100% right, and I've had that same feeling, and I don't want to say that they manufactured an injury to give him time to get conditioned and drop the weight. I'm not saying that at all.
Good, because that would be ridiculous.
Exactly, but using the opportunity to help go ahead and drop that weight, great on their part. But you're right; it does seem like that was their intention. He talked about that. It depends on the condition they come in.
Well, Cutter was actually worried that when he says usually the big men, when they get an injury like that, they balloon. So that was something he was sort of proud of, and not proud of him personally, but proud of Vita, I should say, for not putting on all this extra weight when he's not running around and playing football. So I'm not really sure where you're going with that manufactured injury to put him on like the salad diet program, but so. He seems to be where they want him to be. It's just he's just not quite up to speed yet, as far as football wise. Not playbook wise, but as far as conditioning and all that. So one more week. It's like waiting for a Marvel movie for this kid to play some football. It's just like, is it here yet? Is it here yet?
Right.
Here yet?
Right. And we just know.
I've been hearing about this Black Panther movie for, it seems like 6 months. Is it here yet?
Right. Well, right now it's Captain Marvel as we record this.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
She just hit Entertainment Weekly cover. Trailer just dropped, and then it's like not till like June of next year.
And I got to tell you, I'm not super familiar with the Captain Marvel thing, and I watched the trailer and I'm like, I don't know what this movie is about, but it looks awesome. So take my money. I'm already in.
Yeah, it's Marvel. Trust it.
Exactly. So something else that's a little bit more jumping the gun for injury report, but it is news here for the Buccaneers. So we'll go ahead and cover it here. Brent Grimes is back. He is back at practice. He was saying earlier this week that he fully expected to go, and he is most likely going to play. But Grimes is back. It's good to get our number one cornerback.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Brent, even though he missed, if you ask any Buc fan, hey, who's the number one corner on the Buccaneers, they're all going to say Brent Grimes. He didn't play a lot in the preseason.
He didn't practice a lot either.
It's kind of what I meant.
Yeah.
But when he did, he wasn't having a Brent Grimes type training camp, but he's been in the league so long, you sort of trust he can flip the switch type of deal. But this is a real hard draw for him to come back if his, skills aren't honed or he's lost a step this year. If anything has fallen off as far as his skill set, this is going to be a tough matchup for him coming back, right out of the chute, the Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster Pittsburg Steelers offense. So I'm just throwing this out as a warning. I'm not poo-pooing it, say, oh, Brent Grimes is back. Okay, well, don't expect much from him. But I'm saying that if he still might – he's not going to be – I wouldn't I'm so articulate. It's I wouldn't be surprised if he has a bad game for – all like you can make up all excuses, knocking the rust off, being 35, the receiving core, the quarterback he's playing, the front seven didn't get enough pressure on Ben Roethlisberger and hung him out to dry, whatever. But for you fans out there to think, okay, Brent Grimes is back, here we go, defensive backfield, now we're going to be shut down. I'm just trying to curb your enthusiasm a bit there.
Now, who do you expect to see start opposite Grimes? Are we going back to Davis? Is this going to be a Ryan Smith? Who do you think's go over on the other side with VH3 on IR for the year?
I think they're going to rotate him, but I think the first snap is going to be Smith. I just think that the Buccaneers, Cutter and his coaching staff seem to be big on loyalty and rewarding players that have put effort into getting to where they are. And I feel like they could trust Ryan Smith a little bit more than they can trust Carlton Davis as far as being in the right spot. Now, if this was week 2 and we saw Ryan Smith's performance in the Saints game, I would say Carlton Davis all the way. But it's been widely reported over and over and over again that Ryan Smith had his best game as a cornerback, as a Buccaneer. So I think that he will definitely get to start, but he's going to probably share snaps with Carlton Davis at some point during the game.
And I'd be okay with that. So,
yeah.
All right. So that is Brent Grimes. Now, Ren, we were, I don't want to say chat. We talked a little bit earlier this week about not having a game preview show, but you mentioned earlier, coming into this wide receiver core for the Steelers, for people maybe like myself who don't really follow other NFL teams, and I'm actually fairly familiar with Antonio Brown. Here's what I've heard about the Steelers game, or about the Steelers this year. Everything seems to be in an uproar. Things just seem to be crazy going on within the organization. We know Le'Veon Bell's out. AB had this big thing earlier this week where he didn't even show up to practice on Monday or game film review or whatever, but apparently he's back now, so fine. There's questions as if Mike Tomlin has lost the locker room or anything like that. So there's a part of me, a guy that doesn't really follow the other teams that kind of goes, hey, all that messy stuff over there can only spell good stuff for the Bucs. But, what is it specifically about this offense, you say that gives Brent Grimes could give him some fits coming back into his first game.
Well, we'll give everybody fits. But I like to say that I feel like Pittsburgh's like this at the beginning of every year, honestly.
Are they?
I just feel like it. Ben's going to retire, doesn't know he's going to come back. This is not the first time Le'Veon Bell hasn't been there at the start of the season. There's been 2 other seasons where he's been suspended for different things and has missed games, like 2 games one year, I believe, and 4 games another. I remember it was last year, maybe the year before, the Steelers won a game and somebody was FaceTiming or Facebook Living in the locker room during Mike Tomlin's speech. And, that was, it's Tomlin. It seems like every year it's Tomlin losing the locker room. It just seems like there's always, I feel like this is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are at the beginning of the year. They have a slow start and you're like, okay, this is a year where, they sort of, you write them off, and then at the end of the year, you look up, they've won 11 games, and they're in the AFC Championship game, losing to the Patriots. It just happens year after year after year. So,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you say that, and I think, okay, that's fine with me. Let them suck here at the beginning of the season, and we don't have to worry about them for the rest of the year because we're not,
Right, but then you have to think, well, has their sucking already ended?
Right. Is this the game? Right.
Yeah. Is this the game? And, traditionally they play well on Monday night, and Ben Roethlisberger is a big game player and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. Now, as a pessimist, you can think that, well, it's a wounded team, and I'd rather have them be 2-0 and coming here and try to surprise them than have a wounded team where they're going to fight and scratch and claw for every yard and never take a play off, because this could be, Mike Tomlin could convince them that this is their season. Like, they lose this game, the season's over as far as playoffs. Like, that's it. So, but I agree with you. If you're going to try to catch the Steelers, if you're a inferior talented team early in the year, is the time to do it. But I think the Bucs can hang with the Steelers, especially offensively, because I think their defense is old and slow. And, they've got a decent offensive line. They've got top-notch wide receivers. They got an okay back, and they've got they got a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's basically the Saints all over again, except the defense is older and slower.
All spells good stuff for the Bucs to me. But, people talk about it being a trap game. The Steelers aren't going to be it's not going to be a cakewalk for sure. So, all right. Well, let's get back to some of our headlines here. One of the ones, we actually talked about this already on an earlier show this week, but it just bears repeating. In the news this week, the Buccaneer players kind of came together, and there was an official announcement about a social justice initiative. Ren, there's really not a lot to talk about here. We don't really know a ton about what the details of this is going to look like, but we did cover this earlier on our Final Thoughts episode with an interview with Pat Donovan. So if you didn't get to catch that yet, it's in the podcast feed. Just go back. I think it's 2 episodes back. Final Thoughts grading out the Bucs versus Eagles with Pat Donovan. So you guys will make sure you go do that, and you get to find out why Pat Donovan, shot somebody.
Just wanted to see what it felt like, man. Just wanted to see what it felt like.
Nobody take that to social media. It was a joke. I was like, oh my God, Pat Donovan shooting somebody. No, go listen to the episode. You'll find out what I'm talking about.
In a simulation.
Right.
Yeah. Just to put a cap on it real quick in case, you're not going to go back and listen to it just for that reason. I mean, we talk a lot different, a wide variety of subjects with Pat Donovan, but this happened just to be one of them because it happened that day. Is the Bucs are, and the people on the chair are Ali Marpet, Donovan Smith, Deshaun Jackson and Gerald McCoy. These guys are on the chair of the Buccaneers that are doing this sort of almost like a community outreach program. And they're doing different things like helping ex-cons get back on their feet, get them back in the workforce, and a myriad of other things. And basically they kicked it off by going to Tampa PD down to their training facility, running through some training situations and scenarios to see what the cops did. Then they spoke with the police, and then the mayor was there, and then Darcy Glazer, somebody. Yeah, we got to learn that. I was going to say Berkowitz. It's not Catanzaro. No,
Kasowitz or something, right?
Kasowitz. So,
yeah.
Anyway, she was there, and who does, she's pretty much, I guess, the
Kasowitz,
Kasowitz, yeah. She's pretty much the arm of the Glazer 4 that does all the outreach programs, community service programs. Basically the public view of the Buccaneers, and the Glazer families are matching whatever the Bucs players give up to $1 million for these certain programs. So, and Gerald McCoy made it clear that this is something that, like, we're not coming out here and doing this once. Like, this is something that they want to continue and have it be there long after, even everyone on the team right now is retired. Like, this is going to be years, sort of like the turkey time
with the turkey time with the O-line.
Right.
Which was something started by Jeremy Trueblood.
Was it Trueblood or Zuta?
No, I think it was Trueblood. And one of the other guys, they started the turkey time with the O-line, which, for those of you who may not know, is where the offensive line buys a whole bunch of turkey dinners for Thanksgiving, and families can kind of come through and pick them up, particularly families who can't afford them. I'm not sure how they vet that. I think they may just let people come through. I don't know. We'll find out. But
this year.
We will this year.
And then Demir Dotson picked up the torch, and then he's on the backside of his career. Somebody's going to pick up the torch in the offensive line now, like Donovan Smith or Alley or maybe even Ryan Jensen. And so that's what Gerald's getting out there. So this was supposed to be a real brief summary of what happened, what this outreach program was, but it's not. Anyway, that's what they're doing. I think it's a cool thing, and the programs that the players decide to fund and help out and show up at. They'll be coming out shortly. I feel this is going to be more of an off-season type of deal because the amount of time and effort it takes to show up.
Sure. And I mean, they'll probably have other people that get to work on it for them through the year, as much as they can. So that is certainly something very cool. It's hard to believe that actually happened this week since we already spent so much time talking about it on an earlier episode, but that did happen. Let's hear. Just two more things, Ren, that I have, unless you have something else. Probably one of the more controversial things, I think, was Deshaun Jackson was on somebody's show. He was doing an interview earlier this week, and he made the comment about he kind of got into the whole big conversation people have been having all week long about what do we do when Jameis Winston comes back? Do we give the ball right back to him? Do we stick with a hot hand? Do we, let him wait until after the Chicago game and then give it back to him? Do you just ride with Fitzy? What do you do? And, his words were, you got to stay with the hot hand. So Deshaun kind of weighed in on that. And it was kind of, I don't want to say he threw it. It was a throwaway line for him, but that's what he says. You kind of got to stay with the hot hand. And Fitzpatrick actually, I don't want to say he waved it off either, but he said, when you're throwing passes to people, it kind of makes you their best friend. Like when you're throwing, good passes to them and they're catching them, it sort of makes you their best friend. So Deshaun Jackson kind of getting in on the whole thing, man. What do you think?
Well, I think what you're going right after this is one of the media members asked Todd Monken during the press conference was how much weight, does that, somebody like a veteran player, a leader on your team that says that, how much weight does that take into, the coach's decision of when you're going to switch quarterbacks? And he was just like, none, like zero, nada. The only thing that I think the Bucs have made up their mind, the only thing that I can see have them changing it is I think the Bucs had their mind made up like when Winston left. Like this is the plan. It's what we're going to do, and we're going to stick to it. Now, if Fitzpatrick comes out and throws for 4 TDs again, you're going to have to start rethinking the plan. In my opinion, right now I'm still on board that Jameis starts Chicago the week after the Pittsburgh game because he's been preparing for Chicago for which will be 4 weeks now, and I think it gives him the best chance to win.
And to bounce off of that, something that Fitzpatrick had said in a press conference, he said it somewhere. I swear I heard it, but he was talking about how, listen, he prepared for these first 3 games. He spent the entire, once they figured out that he was going to start these 3 games, all he's been doing is looking at these 3 games. He's, kind of to what you're saying of how Jameis has just been preparing for Chicago. Like Fitzpatrick has been set for these 3 games. And that's not to say that he can't keep going forward. That's not to say that he can't, roll over and start preparing for Chicago or anything like that. But it is an interesting thing to sit back and say, Jameis has been preparing for these games. And because I had that thought when Fitzpatrick said he's been preparing for these 3 games, that one, I thought it was a little telling, but two, that, I don't know if that's perhaps why Fitzpatrick, or it's certainly that has had to have helped Fitzpatrick.
To play loose.
Yeah, for sure.
No matter what happens, like, I'm only playing 3 games.
Right.
Good, bad, or ugly. I'm only playing 3 games.
Right. So, he gets to do that. So.
I thought it was telling because the question was, do you think you deserve to continue being the starting quarterback? And he could have, at that moment, been, this is Jameis's team. Mm-hmm. I'm just filling in, but he didn't. He didn't deflect it, but like you said, he just goes, I'm just concentrating on these 3 games. Mm-hmm. He didn't go as far as say, hey, if after these 3 games the coaching staff wants to keep me starting, I will. But he also didn't go out of the way to say, hey, the clock strikes midnight Monday, Tuesday morning, Jameis is the guy. So I thought that whole thing, and another thing I found interesting, and I don't remember if Deshaun Jackson said it twice, and this has been, since week 1, or he said it once and O.J. Howard said it once. Mm-hmm. It might have been Deshaun twice at different interviews, but the words "he doesn't play favorites" has come out of somebody's mouth more than once.
That's not something I've heard. So interesting.
Yeah, but it's something where you're like, huh, and that's why I know it came out of Sean's mouth one time, and it's it's like, well, why are you having such a good season? Well, he doesn't. Well, Fitzy's great. He's doing the Lions protecting him. He's making the right decisions. He doesn't play favorites, and it's like, huh. It's like, because let's face it, Jameis Winston plays favorites.
Sure.
Because as soon as Jameis gets in there, Cam Brate's getting fed the ball. Yep. And you've seen Jameis throw in double coverage to Mike Evans, and Mike Evans makes the catch. And, the press is like, what were you thinking there, Jameis? He goes, I think I should trust Mike more and do that more. And we're all like, no, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't do that. And he even admitted after the Saints game, the final game last year, where he was pressing and trying to feed it to Mike all game so he'd get his 1,000 yards.
Right.
And these are things that you could explain away a little bit, but when another player comes out and goes, he doesn't play favorites, that kind of tells me that last year when Deshaun Jackson felt like he should have gotten the ball, he wasn't getting it from Jameis. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be something when Jameis does take over the reins. I think that'll be something to look out for. Now, having said all that, I think Jameis did a great job of that during the preseason and a training camp from what I saw.
As far as spreading it around, you mean?
Yeah, as far as spreading it around and going to the place where the ball needed to be instead of where he wanted to throw it. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, oh, well, Mike will catch it. I can squeeze in this little tight window. He'd be like, oh, okay, hey, OJ's one-on-one with the linebacker. How about I throw it over there instead?
Now, how much of that, we talked about this a little bit last year, of Jameis coming in. He's more familiar with Mike. He's more familiar with Cam. He's got that chemistry, and I think it was even you who was saying how, Jameis takes a little bit to get the chemistry down with somebody, but once he does, look out, because then he's lights out. And we know that Jameis and Deshaun worked on this over the course of the offseason. We saw a pretty good training camp out of Jameis, and as you just mentioned, him spreading the ball around. And I thought Jameis and Fitzpatrick looked on par with each other throughout training camp. If Jameis maybe not have even been a little bit more. But how much of it do you think has to do with that? Because, we have yet to really see Jameis in a game situation spreading this around. The only one we've really seen is Fitzpatrick, to see what this year's Jameis looks like.
What was the question? I heard what you said.
Yeah. So what you're saying is talking about it'll be real interesting. You were saying it'd be real interesting to watch this playing favorites thing. Right. But my question being is taking that the step further, the next logical step, that Jameis plays favorites, i.e. Mike Evans and Cam Brate. Right. How much of that was based on we only saw Jameis last year, and those were the guys he was familiar with, versus this year he now has that whole year with O.J. Howard and Deshaun Jackson also under his belt, spent time working on with the offseason. We just haven't seen him yet this year to know if that's actually a thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think, I said this way back when Fitzpatrick filled in for Jameis last year when he was hurt, and I said this might be the best thing that ever happened to Jameis Winston.
Sure.
Watching, Fitzpatrick's style of being, a little calmer, a little more self-controlled. And Jameis even referred to that, I believe, the next interview after the first game Fitzpatrick played. He's like, it's interesting to watch from the sidelines, lead a different way, a little different demeanor and things like that. And then when Jameis came back last year, he had probably the best stretch of, even though he only won one game, but as far as quarterback play and protecting the ball and making smart decisions and getting his team up and down the field, it was probably his best stretch of games as a Buccaneer or a pro. And then we saw it again in the preseason. Let's not forget that even though how great Fitzpatrick played in the preseason, Jameis played better. And if you extrapolate that, you could definitely make an argument for Jameis would be doing the exact same thing Fitzpatrick is doing now. As far as numbers and touchdowns, just because Godwin's got another year and OJ's got another year, so these guys are light years ahead of where they were game 1, game 2 last year. And I think by the time Jameis got back, like Howard was there for one game. Jackson missed the last few games. So your point being is this favorite thing going to continue because now he has this chemistry with the new guys? Yeah, I think so. And I think Jameis has matured as a quarterback from the injury. And I think it's even going to help more from sitting out these first 3 games, possibly more. And I don't expect to see this favoritism. But like I said, it's just something that I'll be interested to keep my eye on. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
No,
did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And one thing that, and I'm sure I'll probably say this a little bit next week when Jameis is actually back and, that whole thing starts up again, and we'll make our comments on it at that point. But one of the things that has kind of bugged me a lot as people talk about Jameis in general is they talk about him as if he's gone through stuff, and they'll say, oh, he has to mature here, or he has to stop doing this, or he has to quit doing this, or he has to fix this thing, as if he hasn't maybe already fixed it.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
You know what I mean? Like you keep talking about this as if he hasn't actually already matured or learned or, gotten over this. No, wait a minute. Did you see what he was doing when we did have him here in the preseason? I know we haven't seen him yet in a game, and that's when it really counts. But, and other issues as well.
And it's like the second half of the season didn't exist.
Right. Exactly.
Play. And it's just like, what were you watching?
Yeah. Right. Right. So, and
I get it, because by the time he got back, we were out of it.
Yeah.
So why would you really watch Bucs games? You just look at the record and go, okay, Jameis, second half of the season, he came back. Oh, he went 1-6. All right. This play's not good.
All right. Well, with that, Ren, before I get to this last bit here that we're going to talk about, did you have anything else from this week that you wanted to talk about for as far as headlines or anything goes?
I squeezed it in there.
Okay.
Those are the two things. It was the thing about Fitzpatrick not necessarily, jumping on SS Jameis. And then the couple of times I heard people say in passing, well, he doesn't play favorites, as we're talking about Fitzpatrick.
So the last thing that I have for this section, it's not really a headline, but it will be one for next week. But we'll go ahead, and this is kind of our little speculation. So we know Jameis returns on Tuesday. He's back. Which means somebody's got to go. Somebody on the roster's got to go. So, Ren, who do you think is getting cut? Or who do you think, maybe 2 or 3 people that are kind of on that bubble for getting cut to make room for Jameis when he comes back?
Alex Kappa and Justin Watson. Let's just get rid of 2 draft picks. No? That's a bad idea. Not going to happen. They're not going to put a 3rd round draft pick on the waiver wire.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. That's weird. Okay. you talked about it way back in the beginning when we were discussing this, probably before the beginning of the season. You talked about Freddie Martino. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a strong candidate for two reasons. I feel like this is like a Luke Stocker move. Mm-hmm. Remember last year where it's like, okay, like we need to bring Auclair up. We're afraid we're going to lose him. So, he's closed the gap enough on his blocking ability with you, Luke, and you're just sort of the odd guy out. Mm-hmm. And I feel that that's like what's going to happen with Freddie Martino. They're going to go, okay, Justin Watson, we feel comfortable enough for him to play special teams. We feel comfortable enough for him to be the fifth wide receiver. We're not losing him. You're just the odd man out, Freddie. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good one. I guess we go through
now. Let me push back on that though, because because remember, Freddie Martino has dressed the last 2 weeks, and Justin Watson has been inactive the last 2 weeks. So what do you say now?
I say exactly what I just said. It's a numbers game. Luke Stocker dressed every week until he got cut. Mm-hmm. I mean, they didn't. It doesn't matter. It's time to move on, is what it is. It's the new guard coming in, and Jameis coming back is pushing their hand. It's not like they want to cut Freddie Martino,
right?
But they're not going to cut their 7th round draft pick that Jason Light was in love with. Was it 7th or 6th?
4th. Are you talking about Watson?
Yeah.
He was 4th.
He wasn't a 4th. No, he wasn't.
5th round. Sorry, 5th.
So anyway, to answer your question about Freddie Martino playing and Watson being inactive, this is going to push Watson to be active.
Gotcha.
That's what's going to happen. I guess we go through the positions. I mean, quarterback, are they going to,
They're not getting rid of Griffin. No,
they're not. And then you go running back. They're not getting rid of any of those guys.
Not getting rid of Rojo. Not getting rid of Quiz.
No.
Yeah.
That could be a real deep sleeper move. Like get rid of Rodgers and just roll with Rojo because he's.
Hey, listen, Monken said that Rojo is his words were he's improving, and he's improving a lot. those were his words.
Offensive line, they're not going to get rid of anybody because they need them all. Mm-hmm. Wide receivers, yeah.
And by the way, on offensive line, we only have 9 guys. We don't have 10. We're not carrying an extra offensive lineman right now, like we were on the original 53. So they're not getting rid of an offensive lineman.
No, Licky's staying and Kappa's staying.
Yeah.
So you got the wide receivers, which is your choice between Justin Watson and Freddie Martino. I think Watson's future outweighs Martino's future. So Martino's a possibility. Tight ends. No, I don't think so. Defensive line, with the way it is now, not a chance. Not till people get healthy. Maybe they get rid of Will Clark because they have once. But I would still put Martino in there. Linebackers, we don't have enough. Stitchy's not going anywhere.
Cam Lynch? What about Cam Lynch?
We don't have enough, but we don't have enough linebackers. Until Beckwith comes back, we just don't have enough. We have 3. We have 5 linebackers. We need them.
Right. So we'll talk about Cam Lynch and Jack Stitchy when Beckwith comes back.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That'll be a conversation when Beckwith comes back. DBs, now we're heavy. It could be Marcus Williams. I think that's a good. That could be a.
Now that Brent Grimes is back.
Right. But Vernon still isn't coming back. So, but I think it's a bit Martino or Marcus Williams. The safety, there's 4. Keeping him. I know you talked about Javian Elliott a little bit.
Javian Elliott also is a possibility. He was a guy. He started on the practice squad, I think, this year, and then got bumped up after the injury. I think that's a name to keep an eye on. But I'm with you. I think the most likely candidate are this Williams guy and Freddie Martino. Now that I've had chance to think about it and look at the roster, but I did want to throw one more name out there, really for the sake of discussion. Because apparently he's found himself in the doghouse this year. Noah Spence, 3rd year, he's missed more games than he's played. Didn't have a good preseason. They left him out there in the 4th game the entire time. He was inactive last week and apparently caused a little bit of a riff or something. Barely played at all in the first game. Is it time? Are they looking at cutting bait with Noah Spence here?
No, that's almost ridiculous as Kappa. No, There's no riff. He's not in the doghouse. Cutter even said that. Because he's not active doesn't mean we're mad at him. We're picking the best 53 guys to win. Mm-hmm. And especially now with Bo Allen and Vita Vea out. I mean, if they come back next week, it might be a conversation, but you don't release a second round draft pick without, it would be out on Twitter by now that the Bucs are shopping Noah Spence. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We'd hear something about that. Once we start hearing that, then possibly
because to finish the statement that from just a second ago, you don't release a second round draft pick without trying to trade him first.
You don't release anybody without trying to trade him first.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not going to get anything from Martino, Marcus Williams. You know that. So that list might be extremely short. Yeah. Okay, who just had 3 corners get hurt Sunday? Okay, maybe we'll call them. Who's you might call. I don't know, the Eagles. Hey, you want Freddie Martino? Your receiver core. I've seen him up close. They're not good. That's it. But when you get a third down pass rusher who got, 5.5, 6.5 sacks? He hasn't even played a full season yet, I don't think.
No, he hasn't.
He still hasn't. He's only got at 15 games, and he's got 6.5 sacks. So, I mean, you can spin that into some capital. So, I just don't think he's a doghouse. He's just not kind of where the defense is going right now. And, I expect him to be actually active because of injuries on the defensive line Monday night. And because JPP and Curry will probably be playing more defensive tackle than they actually had planned them on at the beginning of the week, I think Spence is going to get in there because he's going to be a third down pass rush specialist. And I think he'll be in there probably around, 15 to 20 plays.
Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and transition then into our injury report as we also start to take a look at our predictive inactives for the game. As far as the injury report goes, the Pittsburg Steelers have a lot of guys on here except for one that I'm not overly familiar with, but Morgan Burnett, David DeCastro, and Marcus Gilbert, it's a safety, a guard, and tackle, are all doubtful for the game, which basically means they are likely to not play. However, Tyson Lualu, Raymond Foster, and Joe Hayden are all full participation, probably going to play. Joe Hayden is the one name on there that I'm more familiar with. But anything spark your interest there on the Steelers injury report as far as the game is concerned?
Well, I think that those two offensive linemen are starters.
The DeCastro and Gilbert, who are doubtful for the game? Yeah.
So I think one of them's out for sure. I saw a tweet today where I don't remember who it was. It said they're out, and the other one was it's a game-time decision. So I think one side of their offensive line might be backups, which would, if I was the Buccaneers, that's where obviously I would concentrate my pass rush and my stunts and my linebacker blitzes and my corner blitzes, because I think this is going to be a shootout. And to help out the Buccaneers secondary, they're going to have to get pressure on Ben Roethlisberger and make him uncomfortable. And, it might be gift wrapped for the Buccaneers with having, one side of the line being fill-in guys. So, that's what I will be looking at. I'm not sure if the right side or the left side it is. I'm hoping it's the McCoy Curry side because, like I said, I think that's where the magic's going to happen this year.
Sure.
And it has a little bit so far, at least numbers wise, about how many sacks they have and how many sacks the team have, that type of deal. But that's what stands out is possibly one side of their offensive line might not be there.
Now, you said that you think that this is going to be a shootout. And I'm going to disagree with you on this. I don't. And the reason why I think so is I think our offense will continue to play like it's played the first 3 games. I don't see that changing. I think it'll probably be more along the lines of the Eagles game than it was the New Orleans Saints game. But I fully anticipate, I fully anticipate the offense just doing amazing and making this whole Jameis Winston Fitzpatrick thing just another, week of talk for all the talking heads.
Yay.
I do, however, think that the Buccaneers defense, I think, and I mentioned this earlier this week, they stepped up between week 1 and week 2. I think they are going to take another step forward this week, and I think they're going to continue to do well. And I think they're going to, I think they're going to surprise people. And I'm not going to say they're going to shut down Ben Roethlisberger or AB or any of those guys, but I do think that they're going to give them some fits. And I do think that and this is based more on the step up of the defense rather than anything going on with the Steelers. So I don't know that the Steelers are going to have as much firepower, so to speak, for this to be such a shootout.
Really? Okay.
Really?
Well, I mean, Ben had a terrible first half against the Browns and put up 21 points in the second half. And then I think he had 4 interceptions, and they still put up 21 points. And then they just lost. They just put up like 30 plus against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll
that's what they do. I mean,
Sure.
I think we're going to have to outscore them. Let me ask you this: which part of the defense do you think is going to improve?
I think the defense as a whole is going to improve. I think we'll probably see the most marked improvement in the secondary. But I do, I think the defensive line is continuing to get better. We've only had 2 games, so I think the defensive line has shown that they're continuing to get better. I think they'll continue that trajectory. But I fully expect to see the secondary have another big step up type of a week
Against Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster.
I'm laying it on the table. Yeah, let's do it. I'm laying it on the table. This is a fan podcast. I'm going to be so fan biased right here, right now. No, like I said, to me, this is based more on what I've seen.
How many points do you think Pittsburgh's going to score? I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like I think the second half of the Saints game, the defense played a lot better.
Yes.
I think the defense played about the same, except for that the first quarter or so, the linebackers were a little sketcy again against Philly again, but they kept shooting themselves in the foot. Thanks, Philly. Mm-hmm. I think this, sort of like the second quarter, third quarter, half of the fourth, the Bucs defense played really, well, I wouldn't say really well, but played a lot better than the final score would indicate, or the yardage they gave up and all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So okay, I understand where you're going, where I think the defense is better than you sort of like you look up at the score like, oh, we only won by a score and we were blowing them out. I get that, but like, do you think it's coming from the defensive line? Is it going to? And you said it's going to come from the secondary, and I'm like, well, convince me that Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster are going to throw up a game like Nick Foles, Aguilar, and throw in whatever undrafted receiver that no one has in their fantasy at all. Like I can't even tell you another person who received them.
Right. So and to be fully fair and fully transparent, I can't do that because I don't know those guys that well. And I'll repeat what I said. This is based solely on what I have seen come out of the Buccaneers and sort of the trajectory that I have seen them on. And I could be very wrong. I 100%. Okay, let me take off the fan hat here just for a minute. I don't know. And I'll say it again. I don't know the Steelers that well.
Right. Just
based on what I've seen with our defense, I have seen them on an upward trajectory, and I would anticipate that taking another step this week.
You think they got something for the Steelers for Monday night?
If they do what they're supposed to do as far as that whole like communication thing, and people are playing hard and people are going down there, are they going to hold the Steelers to under 20? I think I mentioned that on a show earlier this week. Probably not. But are they gonna hold the Steelers to less points than what our guys are going to score? Yeah, I think they could. I don't think they're going to shut down the Steelers. I wouldn't think that.
So it's going to be like a shootout?
No, I don't think it's going to be a shootout because I think our guys are going to stay ahead. Is what I'm saying. I think our guys are going to stay ahead.
Doesn't matter. You could win 65-61 and be in the lead the whole time.
I think we're going to stay ahead. I think our guys are going to stay ahead by once our guys get a multiple score lead, I think they will generally stay ahead by a multiple possession lead. Let's put it that way. So anyway, our injury report. Let's get on to that one.
Okay.
Let's get on to that one. Bo Allen, Vita Vea, Marcus Williams. We have actually already talked about all three of these guys. They are out for the game. Vita Vea, Bo Allen and Marcus Williams did not participate at all. Vita Vea did come back and was limited, but he is out. So we've already covered those guys. Chris Conte and Brent Grimes both on the injured report. They were both full participation by Friday. They're both listed as questionable, but that actually means they're probably going to play. So those guys will be in. And then DeMar Dotson, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Chris Godwin, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Donovan Smith all listed on the injury report. A lot of knees and one toe issue with Chris Godwin. But they were all full participation by Friday and are listed as playing for Friday. So that is our injury report, Ren, which really just leaves us with the inactives. So we already know we got Bo Allen, Vita Vea, and Marcus Williams who are out. We need 4 more people from you, my friend. Who do you got?
I think these are going to be really close. And I tweeted this out. I think the Marcus Williams being out, his hamstring injury, is going to open the door for either Rojo or Noah Spence.
Okay.
So I need how many? How many do I need total? I always forget this.
You need 7. You got 4 more to go.
Okay. So the offensive line, they only carry 7, so you got to put 2 down, which is Lidkey and Kappa.
Right.
So now I'm 5.
Now you're at 5, so you need 2 more.
I need 2 more. Justin Watson, who's been inactive. And then this sort of brings it down to Rojo or Noah Spence. And I would love to see Noah Spence dressed on Monday night in there, get in there for a couple of packages. Maybe they have some plays for him. I want to see him in pass protection. Hopefully, he gets in there and does well so he can finally pass Rodgers on the depth chart. So it adds an extra dimension, an extra weapon in there. Like if you want to keep Rodgers in and protect, Fitzpatrick or Jameis, whoever it is, and use him as a 6th offensive lineman, that's good. But when those handful of plays that they're giving Rodgers the ball, I'd rather have that in Rojo's hands.
Sure.
But he's got to get there in pass protection. But with all the injuries at the defensive tackle, I just think that Noah Spence, and I think I talked about earlier, just like 10 minutes ago, he's going to get the nod because they're so low on defensive linemen right now.
I think this conversation comes out. It's what Cutter always says in his press conferences. Who gives us the best chance to win? And if it's between Rojo and Noah Spence, by the way, I agree with you. Down the line, I think it's these 6 guys for sure, and then it's either between Rojo and Noah Spence. And if you look at, okay, what can Rojo bring to the team versus what can Noah Spence bring to the team, and what do their positions, as you mentioned, the injuries to the defensive line versus the non-injuries to our running back field, right. Noah Spence is going to help us more than Rojo will help us. As much as we'd love to see Rojo as much as we'd love to see Rojo get some reps, honestly, Noah Spence is going to help us more. So I think Noah Spence dresses. I think Rojo sits, and he'll be there with Justin Watson, Michael Leakey, Alex Kappa, and Williams, Vea, and Bo Allen.
That's it. It's just one of those guys played special teams that would tip the scale in their favor, but they don't.
Right. So, all right, Ren. Well, that is going to wrap us up for today. You got any final thoughts as we sign off tonight? And after that, you can tell people where they can find you on the internet.
Final thoughts. Let's see. I'm glad they're wearing red.
I'm very glad they're wearing red.
Looks like they're wearing red with white pants or Peter pants. What was it? Was it white pants? I think it's Peter pants.
I think it's the Peter pants. Yeah.
Peter pants, white, red Peter pants. So they're wearing red at home. That's not a color rush before November. Ugh, it's like seeing a unicorn.
I feel like this is a Greg Allman question. Like, when was the last time the Bucs wore red at home before November?
Before November, that wasn't color rush.
Right.
Yeah. God, who knows? Who cares, really? So that'll be fun. And yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout. I'm picking the Bucs 36-31. Don't ask me how they get 36. It's just going to happen somehow. And yeah, so Bucs win, going 3-0. You can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to find me, I'm across all the social medias at Brent Allen Live. And you can get a hold of the show on Twitter at The Pewtercast or at Facebook.com/ThePewtercast, or shoot us an email to ThePewtercast@gmail.com. We've actually already got a lot of emails in for this week, Ren, that will be coming out on our final thoughts emails segment for next week. So
haven't even played the game yet.
I know. Lots of people have already sent in some emails. So you guys feel free to send us in those emails. We will read them on the show next week for sure. So until then, guys, hey, listen, if you're going to be at the game, you probably can find me at the What the Buck tailgate earlier that night. Or if you're going to be at the stadium, shoot me a tweet and let me know where you are. Would love to be able to come say hi to you. Got to say hi to lots of our listeners last week too, Ren, which was super cool. So would love to keep that going as well. So until next time, guys, go Bucs.